Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Thank John Stolnis for jumping aboard. Coming up in less than 20 minutes now, Mike Tanier, who's been on with us plenty over the years. They've been doing Birds 365 here. The co-author of the FTN Almanac is going to jump in and talk all things NFL with us. Yeah, Johnny Mac, you and I were discussing the Dennis Kelly situation and the trade that landed him in Tennessee when the Eagles moved on from him a couple of years ago for Dorial Green Beckham, who just didn't quite cut it here. And you said you didn't really call it a lost trade for Howie Roseman because it was a trade that made philosophical sense when the Eagles pulled the trigger on that one. And it doesn't, in your mind, doesn't matter as much. The results as if the trade made sense at the time. Am I characterizing what you said fairly?
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of GMs over the years because I'm interested. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to GMs and how they do their job. And, you know, there's a thought process with, you know, people who've got to make decisions in an unpredictable sort of environment. And that's if you're rewarding outcomes, it's a bad idea. And by that, you can make a good decision and get a bad outcome. You can make a bad decision and get a good outcome. But the more good decisions you make, you stack them together, the more good outcomes you're going to get. So that's kind of the philosophy behind it, because you're always going to miss in the NFL. We talk about it all the time. And in the case of, I think Dennis is a good example. I brought up Ryan Bates. You know, but here's the problem GMs have, Jody. Owners don't necessarily agree with that. And this is a bottom line business. And this is one of the luxuries I talk about that Howie has that other people don't have. You know, that this is a bad day for the Philadelphia Eagles. You know why it's a bad day? Because Daniel Snyder's finally out. They're going to approve the sale today for the Washington Commanders to Josh Harris. Not that I think Josh is a great owner. You see him here in Philadelphia. I think he's middle of the road, what have you. Middle of the road is a heck of a lot better than the worst owner in recorded history, at least in the NFL in the modern environment. So, you know, those guys got a tough job, GMs. Most of them have these owners that are like, I don't care. I don't care if you're going to explain to me Harvard philosophy on decision making. You know, did you win or did you lose? Did you get a good player or did you get a bad player? And people make these rash decisions and you end up with this constant churn, you know, in these important positions. And those tend to be the bad organizations. The Eagles are a good organization for a reason. They realize you ain't going to get it right every time. And if you're hyper focused on the mistakes and don't recognize, well, we're 8 out of 10 or we're 7 out of 10, and that's better than most other teams' hit rates, that's when you get into trouble.
Right. You and I are close, but we do disagree on one specific thing. And yeah, I kind of know a little bit about general managers and how they handle their business, seeing as I lived in a house with one who did it for many years on a professional level and had to deal with the W's and L's of trades. It's a cutthroat business and you are judged by it, and good owners will be more patient with you, and Jeff Lurie is about as good as it comes. So Howie Roseman's track record is what it is, and it's way above 500. So you're right. Howie can do certain things that others can't. But if you have an L, you got to take an L. You can't just, it was a good idea behind it. Here's my philosophy behind it. An L is an L is an L. If I had told you that Mickey Loomis last year believed his Chauncey Gardner-Johnson trade was a good one, would you say, all right, if he can justify it in his mind, can he call that one a W? No, he can't. Well, they weren't keeping Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They were moving on from him. They weren't going to use him. They had 2 safeties. He wasn't going to start for them, and they got 2 draft picks for him. It doesn't matter what he did, went and got 6 interceptions for the Eagles, wasn't going to play for us. Could Mickey Loomis, by your philosophy, say, oh, I can call that one a W because I had the philosophy nailed down as to why I wanted to move off Chauncey Gardner-Johnson?
Well, Mickey is graded the same way by me as Howie Roseman and everybody else. I grade everybody the same way. So if I think the deal makes sense, that's my scorecard. It's not like Howie's coming up to me and saying, "Oh, by the way, John, that was a good decision when we traded Dennis Kelly for Jordan Green Beckham." He's not trying to lobby me to say it was a good decision. In my opinion, it was a good decision because Dennis Kelly was not going to make the team and they needed a receiver. And for those who don't know, it's been a while. This guy was a second, I think he was 40th overall, somewhere in that range. And the only reason he was 40th overall is because of the off the field stuff. I mean, he got in some significant trouble at Missouri. He got kicked out of school, had some ugly accusations when it came to physical assault. This was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. This was one of the best receiving prospects ever. 6'4", 6'5", ran 4, DK Metcalf level size and speed. And it didn't work out. They needed a receiver. They didn't need an offensive lineman. Same thing with Eli Harold. I bring up that trade with Ryan Bates. They didn't need an offensive line. Ryan Bates wasn't going to make this team, not even close. And Eli Harold was a former 3rd-round pick, and he was an edge rusher, and they needed an edge rusher. And you rolled the dice, and it didn't work out. So that's my scorecard. It's not like Howie's saying, oh, by the way, I'm sort of trying to explain the mistakes. I acknowledge it didn't work out in the end, but that's my thought process of just rewarding outcomes is bad because, again, you can make a bad decision. You can make a bad decision and it works out and it works out really well. And you say, well, if we keep doing that, if we keep using that decision-making, it's going to keep working. That's going to end up really, really badly. Mickey Loomis, I don't think has made good decisions. Now we have Randy on the show, Randy Mueller. He's a big Mickey Loomis guy. He'll defend him, but I think he defends him because he's a big Mickey Loomis guy. Howie's a good GM. And I said it when people thought he was a bad GM, and now they're all on board with it. The only reason they're on board with it is because he sticks to his guns and he uses the same philosophy, trade in and trade out. One of the things Howie was most upset about with the Jalen Reagor pick, and you can believe him or not, maybe he's blowing smoke up everybody's what because he doesn't want that stain on his resume, but that stain's already on his resume. Nobody's given him a pass for drafting Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. He never hears the end of it. One of the things why he's changed since that day, he believes if he's making the decisions and he's going to take the good or bad, he should make the decision. And he feels he leaned on the coaching staff a little bit too much. And he wanted Jefferson and blah, blah, blah. And the scouts wanted Jefferson. And they kind of threw the coaching staff under the bus. I don't know if it's true, to be honest. They might be just throwing him under the bus because they don't want it. But I talked to Doug about it, and, he did like Jalen Reagor a lot. So maybe it is true. And I know he regrets it for that reason because he didn't go with his final decision. And I'm speaking of Howie. But yeah, rewarding outcomes. That's what Daniel Snyder does. That's what bad owners do. If you don't acknowledge the unpredictable nature of the NFL, Jalen Carter's another example. Man, that's a good decision. That for me, it's over. Period. End of sentence. Good decision for the Philadelphia Eagles. Would it have been a good decision for the Chicago Bears? Maybe not. maybe if I'm in Chicago and I go, you know what? Ryan Pace doesn't have the cachet Howie Roseman has. Can't take the kid number one. Absolutely can't. I get that. Um, then, unfortunately, he traded down and he was in another position where could have had the kid again and still didn't have the guts to take him. That I question more because it's, later in the process and there's at least a little bit more wiggle room to say, oh, it's worth it. The value's worth it. You potentially get the best player in the draft, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, if he goes off the rails and he does some stupid stuff, it's still to me not going to change that it was a good decision.
Yeah, you and I see this very differently. Maybe you're just more cerebral than I am, John. It's a results-oriented business. It's a results-oriented world in which we live. I can understand a person's philosophy and doing a deal, making a trade, making a pick, whatever else. And you're right. You would rather have a guy who puts more thought into it, who can justify it in his own mind, justify it to his boss ahead of time, than just, oh, well, give me a year and we'll figure out whether he got it right or wrong. There is a process to it. But at the end of the day, when you reach a period down the line and results are in, results outweigh philosophy every day of the week and twice on Sundays. No matter how good your thought process was to arrive at a decision, eventually the results are going to win the day. That is always going to be the number one determinant as to whether you did something right or something wrong. It may suck. You may think it's unfair, but that's life. And Jeff Lurie is better than other owners at giving his people who work under him latitude and letting them make their decision and cutting them slack and giving them more time, whatever else. And that's one of the reasons why the Eagles are a good organization. But yeah, at some point, when they felt that Doug Peterson was not getting the job done because he was flexing his muscles with picking coaches, they moved on from a Super Bowl winning coach 2 years later. Was that a good decision or a bad decision? Well, Nick Sirianni's come in and done well.
And I constantly say they should have given, and I haven't moved off that. They should have given Doug another opportunity because of what he did. And I still firmly believe that. So it's not like I always say the Eagles make the right decision. But you're right. I said that in my explanation. It's a bottom line business. But that takes care of itself if you make good decisions over a long period of time. That's the whole point of the philosophy. What doesn't work consistently is if you're herky-jerky and you're making goofy decisions, but one works out. And it might work out brilliantly for a short span. And that's why the Eagles are the Eagles and the Commanders are the Commanders and the Cowboys are the Cowboys and the Giants have been the Giants. You don't have to look outside the NFC East. You got one good organization and three bad organizations, I would argue. Now, there's a lot of good with Jerry Jones, but he's a wild card. He gets too involved. He does all this stuff. The Giants for years were a tremendous organization, and then they went away from what they did in the Jerry Reese, Tom Coughlin. And you go back further, they were very stable, very structured, and they were a good organization, a good team. Then they go away from it. They had a decade where they were just lost, just absolutely lost. Washington, again, pre-Daniel Snyder, tremendous organization, tremendous. Then they sell it to this guy, and they're the worst organization in the NFL because he consistently makes bad decisions. That takes care of itself. And that's the big advantage the Eagles have had in the NFC East over the past number of years. And I'm not going to say Dallas is a bad organization. They're kind of in the middle, but Jerry does some.
You got a bad general manager.
Yeah.
AKA the owner.
He does some tremendous things business-wise, but I'm talking football-wise.
Yep.
Washington, we know. The Giants are the best example because they were a good organization and a couple things went badly and they said, we got to move on from Jerry Reese. And all of a sudden, Dave Gettleman's in there. Well, good. Then you see bad decision, bad decision, bad decision, bad decision. It takes care of itself, the bottom line. If you're patient, and that doesn't mean you're not going to have bad seasons like the Eagles did in Doug Peterson's last season. It's a talent-driven league. It's cyclical. But the Eagles prove, they make far more good decisions than bad decisions. They can rebound far quicker than these other organizations. That part of it takes care of itself if you're willing to have the patience to let it take care of itself.
I surely agree with your overall evaluation of the Eagles. Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman, since he's gotten back into the big chair, just stone cold outstanding. But it doesn't mean because overall the Eagles are one of the best organizations in the National Football League, you can't look at an individual decision and go, oof, they missed on that one. It happens. It doesn't besmirch everything else that they've done. And to use the example you used, if Jalen Carter goes out and is caught driving a car 120 miles this week and he racks it up and he injures himself or somebody else, I'm sorry, Howie's an F. If he never takes the field, no matter how great the decision-making process was, and at number 9 was just too much value, and they had that thing play. If the guy goes out and wraps a car around a tree, I'm sorry, it's an F of a pick. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how good the thought process was. It comes down. He goes out and makes the Pro Bowl this year. It's an A+. Of course it is. The 8 teams passed on him. He's going to make the Pro Bowl as a rookie. It can go either way, but it will be decided by what's done on the field or off the field, not by the decision-making that got to them calling out his name on draft night.
It works again. By the way, I don't think people listen at all. I got somebody in the comments saying, do the 3 other bad teams in the division have multiple Super Bowl titles over? I just got done telling you the Giants had a great organization. The Washington Redskins had a great organization pre-Daniel Snyder. That's when they won the Super Bowls. The Cowboys had one of the best organizations in the NFL for years, right up, not only, by the way, to give Jerry Jones credit during the Jimmy Johnson, but I'm talking about, Tex Schramm and Gil Brandt and Tom Landry, maybe the best organization in football as a whole. That's when they won, when they had good organizations. Now that they have crappy organizations, magically, they stink.
25 years since the last Super Bowl.
Yeah. Now, getting back to Jalen Carter, look, I get it. And people, that's what sports is. And yes, if he gets arrested doing 100, people are going to, and that's why it takes patience. I say it all the time. On the other end of the spectrum, by the way, you can't say because Jalen Hurts became Jalen Hurts, that was a good decision. That was a goopy decision.
Yeah,
but it worked out.
You and I are never going to agree on this.
Yes.
I'm a results-oriented guy. You're a philosophy guy.
Yes. The point I'm trying to make is the more good decisions, the more good outcomes. The more bad decisions, the more bad outcomes. Occasionally, and that's the whole. And look at, and by the way, don't listen to me. You can Google decision-making executives. They'll all say the same thing. Rewarding outcomes is a bad way to do business because you can get lucky. But you're not going to get lucky consistently. And you're not going to be unlucky consistently if you make consistent good decisions.
Yeah, I'm a results-oriented guy. If once enough data has been taken in after the fact, you can go back and evaluate what was or wasn't a good or bad decision. No matter how you felt about it at the moment, at that time, you need to be flexible with your ability to analyze whether it was or wasn't a good decision, and nothing surpasses results.
No matter how many times the Giants won multiple Super Bowls. Yeah, when they were a good organization.
It's been a while since
Bill Parcells, Tom Coughlin, Jerry Reese, George Young. They were a great organization. Dave Gettleman, Pat Shermer, Joe Judge, on and on and on. What is this not what am I screaming into the wind, Jody? Man.
You and I did, you know what you and I disagree on. I don't disagree with you a little bit that of late being the last 5 years, maybe even 10 years, Giants Patriots, we now more than 10 years from when the Giants knocked off the undefeated Patriot. What year was that? Tanya will know. I can ask him in a second when we punch him up. What year did the Giants beat the Patriots when they were undefeated? I should know it off the top of my head. I don't, but I'm saying it's a minimum of 8 or 9 years. It might be 10. The Giants haven't done diddly squat since then. The Redskins, the Commanders, Redskins football team, call them what you want, haven't done diddly squat, and the Cowboys haven't done diddly squat. Yeah, if we're talking about the history of the organization, yes, they have all at times been outstanding, top of the pile type organizations. Been a while for all three of the other teams in the division, not known as the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm with you, John, on that one. If people are misinterpreting what you said, shame on them. All right, Jody McDonald, John McMullen, always laughing at the ongoing conversation we're having. Mike Tanya is going to join us next, co-author of the FTN Almanac, talking NFL with us here on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku?